আমরা আপনার কনসালটেশন এসেছিলাম এন্ড আমরা আমাদের ইনকোয়ারি গুলো আপনার কাছে জেনে নিয়েছিলাম।
যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন না থাকে যেতে পারো, মানে কোনো
স্যার এটা কি কোশ্চেন অ্যান্সার সেশন ছিল?
হ্যাঁ, but I will explain this to the other group, those who couldn't attend the consultation. And if you have any question, welcome. If you have any question, you can ask.
Okay, sir.
You can leave if you want to. সমস্যা নাই।
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম।
স্যার জাস্ট কোয়েশ্চেন বলতে স্যার একটু প্রিসাইজলি আর কি জাস্ট রিভিউ করতে চাচ্ছিলাম যে কি কি জিনিস আর কি প্রেজেন্টেশনে থাকা ভালো বা আপনার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে যে ম্যান্ডেটরি, কারণ উই মাইট তখন আর কি ভুল হয়ে যাবে বাদ পড়ে গেলে, তখন আপনি যদি জাস্ট স্পেসিফিক্যালি বলে দেন যে এই জিনিসগুলো শুধু থাকাটা ম্যান্ডেটরি, বাকিটা হচ্ছে আমরা তো করছি।
আই মিন ম্যান্ডেটরির মধ্যে একটা হচ্ছে যে সব স্টুডেন্টদেরকে বাকিরা যারা আছে সো মিড টার্মে যে কোয়েশ্চেনটা ওখানে বেসিক্যালি this particular point comparing monarchy and non-monarchy through the lens of understanding the positions of women, how different cultures are treating or having a perception towards women. এখন আমি নন মোনার্কি রাখছি। এখন নন মোনার্কির মধ্যে ডেমোক্রেসি এবং ডেমোক্রেসির বাইরেও অন্যান্য জিনিস যেমন অলিগার্কি ওটাও থাকে। তো আমি বলি সেটা হচ্ছে যে and if you want you can record this, up to you. Anyway, so group 3 and 4, group 3 will go first, that's the thing. And they will talk about position of women in non-monarchy also. That's what we'll begin with, the position of women in the non-monarchies. Of course, it's very hard to find out the non-monarchies of the ancient world, ancient period. Most of the organized governing system, it was based on some sort or some type of a monarchy. So non-monarchyর মধ্যে প্রথমে the first thing we look at is ancient Athens. So group 3, the first member will talk about ancient Athens, and in ancient Athens there is a term that is known as philocracy. Philocracy is a term that is used to understand the position of women of ancient Athens. So define what it is, take some time to define it, some aspects, 80 থেকে 82 page. A boy, you have these two are the same links, একই link, মানে একই বই, একই link. তো ওখানে ফিলক্রেসি জিনিসটা কি, ফিলক্রেসি কিভাবে চর্চা হতো, what is philocracy, how is philocracy or how was philocracy practiced in ancient Athens, and so define the term and do talk about some aspects of Athens that we have covered in class, like democracy. Athens had a democracy, but within their frame of democracia, their system of governance, women weren't allowed to vote. On top of that, you have a total disregard of women's sexual consent. Homosexuality for men were allowed, and this thing is written in the book that we covered in class. Anthony Blackett যে বইটা, ওখানে এই লাইনটা ছিল, there is this line, and there are evidences, we have evidences. All the intellectual institutions like Plato's Academy or Aristotle's Lyceum, all these schools where individuals were admitted and they were trained to be philosophers, or they were trained to be dramatists. Some people were practicing arts, some people were practicing philosophy. It was a part of their profession. They were training to be professionals in these different fields, but women in Athens weren't allowed in any of these institutions. So we do have an image of Athens. It's a birthplace of democracy and intellectual freedom. People could actually ask questions and critique different concepts. This is not a actively religious um, um, traditional traditionally, if you study or the other ancient societies that we have studied, focused on their religion a lot, but here you don't find that. In Athens, it was much more. Um, the orientation was much more towards knowledge, understanding, and inquiry. Philosophy that a borrow part of the inquiry, inquiring into the things, the nature of the things. So all these things are there, but women weren't allowed. So this is an example of philocracy. You can talk about the laws of Solon. It's written in the book. Solon, who was the lawgiver of Athens, in his laws you have certain restriction for women, which also indicates philocracy. And so this is what the first member talks about. We have a video here. The video um, this basically women in ancient Greece, and here you might find some concepts, some ideas of ancient Athens, um, and so basically what you do is maybe listen to the first 5 to 6 minutes. Not women of Sparta is not important for the first member. So till let's say 6 minutes, from the beginning to the 6 minutes, you can uh, pick up some examples from the video, examples that you think are suitable for the class to understand how was philocracy practiced in Athens. Philocracy, if you define it, then define it in a way that this is an abuse of patriarchy. So philosophy is not philocracy is not patriarchy. পুরুষতান্ত্রিক সমাজ এটা শুধুমাত্র ওখানে থেমে গেলে হবে না. Philocracy is when you abuse patriarchy. So how is this patriarchy or the system of patriarchy that was in Athens abused, where women were oppressed? So oppression is the বিষয়গুলো, the examples of oppression, bring those up, talk about those. Any question on this?
স্যার, অ্যারিস্টটলের যে প্যাট্রিয়ার্কাল চিন্তা ওটা কি এখানের মধ্যে বলবে নাকি ফার্স্ট মেম্বার যে হচ্ছে এগুলোকে হচ্ছে জাস্টিফাই করতো?
As an example, you can bring in Aristotle. So Aristotle was an Athenian, but yes, even in his teachings, or even in his philosophical formulation, women were viewed as an inferior sex. And Aristotle actually took it to the next level when he was studying zoology, botany, even in the species of animals and plants. He concluded that the woman or the female kind are inferior to the male kind. So you can bring those up as an example of the influence of philocracy in philosophers who visited Athens or who lived in Athens. Aristotle is a great example. You can talk about that, critiquing Aristotle. Next member talks about position of women in Sparta, where you can watch this video or the ekhaneo ache, as you can see, women of Sparta, but it's not that much. Here you have a much more detailed explanation of how women were in Sparta or women of Sparta, ancient Sparta. Talk about the second member talks about some of the privileges, some of the access that Spartan women had, which Athenian women didn't have. So talk about that, but also talk about the role of motherhood, that if a woman fails to become a mother, then the Spartans did not look well or they looked down upon that particular woman who couldn't become a mother, because Spartan, the very idea was that the women are supposed to, they are the breeders of warriors. They will give birth to new warriors, and the general ethos of Sparta will remain, or that will perpetuate. The Spartans are the producers of warriors, and women were supposed to train these warriors at a very early stage. So the role of motherhood is very important to critically analyze. So yes, Spartan women did have far more privileges and freedom compared to the Athenian women, but there are at least one limitation. There is one limitation here regarding the lives of women in Sparta. And just talk about other aspects that you pick up from the video. Please, you do not have to talk about everything. You present what you think is good to talk in class, or what you are comfortable with to present in class. 5 minutes is your time. So do not think that a 13-minute video will have information um, that you will cover in 5 minutes. You cannot. So you can tell the class that look at the video that is provided for further information, and you, the member who is presenting, will have to listen to the whole 13 minutes, and then you have to basically select some points or a group of points that you think are necessary to present in class. Any question?
No, sir.
For the third member, I mean, some groups have 3 members. For those groups, you can avoid this, but those who have 4 members, you can present on this, and that is the video on Sappho. Sappho was basically a poet, a woman poet. She wrote lyrical poems, and because she was a woman, her achievements, her credibility was not highlighted, or was not an important part of ancient Greece. We are trying to again bring back Sappho. We are trying to understand her historical significance. So this is the life or the work of one particular woman who was a poet, who contributed in the to the field of ancient Greek literature. But since she was a woman, there are critiques. Her works did not receive a wide readership. So talk about that. Talk about Sappho. This is just an example of a woman, and the fact that had she not been oppressed, had her works not been oppressed, then definitely we would have more information about her. We do not have any information about her, very limited information. So again, pick things that you think are necessary and then present those in class. The last member talks about the speech of Hortensia. Now, the fourth member, you can, in addition to reading the 2 pages, you can actually start by giving a little background on ancient Rome. What happened when the Republic, failed? So the Republic failed with the coup of Julius Caesar, as we have discussed in class. And then what happened was Julius Caesar was murdered, and there was a civil war in Rome. এটা ছোট করে একটু বলে talk about this for a little, uh, maybe 1 minute or 1.5 minute. Talk about these information, or even less than that. Concisely, very briefly, talk about the changes that was happening in Rome after the republic was abolished, and after the civil war, when Julius Caesar was murdered, there was a civil war. After the civil war, Rome became an empire. When Rome became an empire, those who were the emperors, Rome was a triumvirate. Triumvirate meaning there will be 3 people in power, not one. This is not a traditional monarchy. There will be triumvirate, three people in power, And of course, among the three, there will be one who is supremely powerful. He would be known as the monarch. So the monarch was the Emperor Augustus, the stepson of Julius Caesar. Gaius Octavius. Augustus is a title, এটা একটা উপাধি. So what happened was, when Rome became an empire, it faced an economic crisis. We all know, after a war or after any revolution, the economy, it faces some problem, and reconstruction period is necessary for the economy to be up and running again. So the emperor decided that we will confiscate the wealth of the elites. But most of the elites were murdered or they escaped from. Many of them had to leave their wives. Hortensia was wife of one of the Senate members of the Republic. And when Rome became an empire, the emperor wanted to confiscate the wealth of these senatorial elites. So Hortensia was, along with other women, and Cicero's wife was also with Hortensia when she gave this speech. She gave this speech publicly, and what she said is that we women, or women of the upper class, will have nothing to do if our wealth are confiscated. And what will happen is that we will be reduced. So Hortensia is telling that we have never been allowed to voice our consent whether we want a monarchy or a republic. We women have not been given any employment opportunity. We can't work like men in this society. So if our wealth are confiscated, then we will be left with nothing. And so she was basically trying to make a statement protecting the position of the elite women. This is the first aspect. And the second aspect is, this is the one of the only surviving examples from the ancient world where women, of course they are from the upper class, but women, or a group of women, are giving a speech publicly, trying to define the political position of women of the ancient world. Hortensia's speech is very political. It has a political significance. এরকম পাওয়া যায় না উদাহরণ যে নারীরা পাবলিক স্পেসে গিয়ে directly critiquing the emperor, who's the emperor of Rome, directly critiquing their actions. সমালোচনা করছে, বলছে এটা ভালো না. So of course, women's participation in the public space, this is a great example of it. The last part that is mentioned in the question is optional. Do you think only the upper class women of ancient Rome could voice their dissent in public? What about the reality of the middle and the lower class? You can do some research. If any group 3 from any section feels like, acha, we will avoid Sappho, and 2 members can take on this last part, another member can independently research on whatever they could dig out or find about the reality of the middle and the lower class women, and talk about that. Or you can avoid this. You can keep this optional. Up to you how you present. Different sections will have different presentation. So keeping this optional, but talk about the republic and the transition from republic to the empire first, shortly, very concisely, and then talk about Hortensia's speech. Any question?
Sir.
Okay. So coming to then group 4. Group 4, the task that is preserved for you. The first 2 members talks about ancient China, and the first member talks about actually Saiyan. I'm not sure, we can have a look. Chaiyan, actually. During the Han dynasty. Yes, I wasn't sure of this. She lived during the late Eastern Han dynasty. And one important part of the Han dynasty is that as they were expanding their territory.
Sir,
yes.
There is a
you are breaking, your voice is breaking up. Can you write in the Google chat?
Sir, maybe he was trying to say that like there is a poem of on that.
Yes, there is a poem on that, and the first member will cover on the poem.